Hello, my name's Galena. I'm the fiancé of Joshua Lee McCollister, who was murdered on July 8th by Deunn Willis and robbed by Danielle Durand. I had a conversation with Josh's mom last night. It's always so cathartic for me to get to talk to her. I decided last night I was gonna share a memory I had with her and ask her a couple questions about the stabbing that Josh had happened to him in Fort Bragg. You know, shooting these videos is actually really traumatic for me because little things float to the surface that I guess blocked out. Because stalking is violence. Even if they don't lay a hand on you, it's still violence because it just destroys your life. I was thinking about the fight where 5 of Josh's ribs were broken and he was disfigured, and the instigator tried to take his eye out, and I was in the next room for that. And this memory floated to the surface of there was a lot of yelling during that incident, a lot of yelling, and Josh yelled at the instigator that he knew that the instigator had set him up to be stabbed in the face, that, you know, it wasn't really the person that stabbed Josh that he held accountable, it was the instigator. And the instigator was protesting, "No, man, it wasn't me." You know, there's a tape of this fight. You know, I keep hoping that the law enforcement up in Humboldt County will hand Josh's phones over to his parents, because, see, Josh knew there was going to be violence that night. The only reason he was in the house was because he was afraid that the instigator was going to put hands on me. That was the only reason. You know, I was scared, and I asked him to please come to protect me, and he came. And he told me, you know, you need to set up a camera, because if he puts hands on you, you can give it to the cops. And I wasn't able to figure it out, and so Josh had a camera up. So all this that the instigator did, breaking Josh's ribs and disfiguring him, there's a tape of it. It's all on tape. And Josh actually thought later on that the reason the instigator was coming at us so hard was because he was terrified that that tape was going to surface. So anyway, Josh was confronting him about the instigator setting him up to be stabbed in the face. And I didn't know why Josh believed that, because he hadn't told me. If there was something traumatic, if it was scary, he wouldn't tell me, because he thought I'd been scared enough. So I decided I would ask Josh's mom. I knew that Josh ultimately did turn out to be right, because one of the last tapes that he sent me before he died was a video of him scrolling through the instigator's Facebook friends list. And lo and behold, the guy that had stabbed Josh in the face was a friend of the instigator. But when Josh was doing this recording, he hadn't been aware of that. So it turned out he was right. But whatever information he had back in January that he never shared with me, it was something different. So I asked Josh's mom, why did he think the instigator had set him up to be stabbed? Sure enough, his mom had that missing puzzle piece. It's a few days, she told me, after Josh was stabbed. Really stabbed. I mean, there was blood from the top of his hairline to the bottom of his shirt, shoulder to shoulder. He was just covered. They almost cut his freaking nose off. I'm gonna try and get this story as correctly as Sandy told it to me. Josh is walking in Fort Bragg. I think she told me that a truck pulled up to him and the guy that had stabbed him greeted him, said hello to him. And the person in the truck with the person that had stabbed Josh told me his mom was a very close relative of the instigator. She didn't remember who it was, and I said, oh, Mama, I know exactly who that frickin' would have been. I know, because see, the instigator was on meth when this happened. He was on meth when he broke Josh's ribs. And people on meth aren't good at keeping their mouths shut. And he had told me that Heidi was friends with the guy that stabbed Josh in the face. And no doubt, no freaking doubt that it was her. As I said in the other video the other day, somehow or another, all this shit is going to lead back to Heidi. And I was so angry to find this out. I really wanted to believe that Heidi was just like one of those people that, she likes to start drama. But this is more than just starting drama. He could have died. This guy hit him in the head with a shovel and almost cut his nose off. This is not just, spreading rumors. This is taking it to a very unforgivable point. And again, like I said in the video the other night, how many lives has she wrecked? Because, she's a fentanyl dealer, she's a meth dealer, so she's wrecked a lot of lives. I didn't think she'd go that far. So much of what they did to Josh, they were able to get away with because he was an outsider. He wasn't a local. They would never dare do this stuff on his home turf. They wouldn't have gotten away with it. But Josh didn't have family in Mendocino County. He barely had any friends. He could walk up to anyone and say hello, very friendly. But in terms of who he was as a human being, he was actually very shy. I am going to be fighting until my last breath to make sure these people wind up behind bars. You hear me, Heidi? Because I know sooner or later this video is going to get back to you. I will not stop until you get time. I won't. I absolutely will not. Same thing for the enabler. What she did to me, that was a felony. Until she's in actual prison, I will not back down. Sandy asked me a question on the phone last night. She asked me, were Josh and I being gang stalked? I hadn't heard of that term before. I thought she actually said game stalked. She was talking about video games. And she said, honey, you need to go look up some videos on what gang stalking is. Read up on it. So after I was done talking to her on the phone, I looked it up on YouTube, and there was a 5-minute video. About 2 minutes into it, I was just cussing like a sailor. So I say, no. That Josh is still with me in some way. That he hasn't left me because he left me all of the swear words to remember him by. I was so angry because that's exactly what was happening to us. Exactly, to a T. And, I remember having so many conversations when the stalking was going on with Josh, saying, we're autistic. These people, the instigator knew us for so many years. And he's deliberately, poking us in the autism. He's deliberately triggering our autism. These are just a bunch of neurotypical bullies that are like doing things to traumatize and overstimulate us, like like the instigator. One of the petty things he'd do is he'd play music really loud, because you know, if you do that with an autistic person, their brain fries a little bit. Can't think straight. Can't make good decisions. I think so much about what would have happened if Josh and I could have met up in Eureka just a few days before he died. And I think I would have met him in a motel room, and he would have walked in the room, and I would have just broken down crying the second I saw him, because I was so destroyed by that point. I was so completely destroyed psychologically after what they did to me. The fact that they got my private data and that they were sharing it and making that fake Facebook page talking about me being raped, talking about me being beaten and put in the hospital, that they were having a good time with this information that I, above all, never wanted my kids to ever find out about. And here they were with the intention to broadcast it. It was like being gang raped all over again. That's exactly what it felt like, because I didn't even know how many people were having a good time with me being raped, and they were having a good time with it. The screenshots I have, what they were actually saying, it was just so sadistic. That's how they broke me. Now, they broke me in a few ways at the end there, but all of which involved rape. But that's what they did to me, to make me just shut down psychologically. And Josh, he was really shut down psychologically there at the end too. The word he always told his mom, and he said to me, was he was just exhausted. You know, that's another reason why he was in Eureka for as long as he was, why he didn't get to Lincoln City, is because he was just so tired. You know, this had been going on for 6 months at that point. He was just tired. What they did to him, the instigator knew that Josh had been tortured. No other word for it, as a child. And one of the hardest things about what that son of a bitch who tortured Josh's little boy is it's not the physical violence that Josh went through, it's that he couldn't save someone else. He couldn't protect that other person from being hurt. That's why he was such a protective adult. That's why he was so protective of me in particular, because he was terrified that I was going to have things happen to me, because he'd had to endure watching that as a child and not being able to stop it. He lived with that horrible trauma of not being able to save someone else. So what the instigator did, what these people that were gang stalking us did, is they put rumors out there that Josh heard. That deliberately they made sure Josh heard these rumors, that I was going to be gang raped, that I was going to be tortured to death. And Josh was just panicked. Like, I remember one time he had heard something to that effect, and he was just holding me, and he was so upset because he didn't know how he was going to save me. He didn't know how he was going to protect me from these people because he couldn't watch me every single minute. And that's one of the last times I talked to him on Skype. He was breaking down, crying, sobbing. I can't protect you. I can't protect you. I can't keep you safe. That was the thing that he was terrified of, haunted by. They knew that if they threatened me, he would not be able to think straight. That maybe he'd make a mistake, screw up somehow. It was so cruel what they were doing, and it's so incredibly rapey too. I mean, to do this to autistic people, to do this to survivors of gang rape, people that had endured what Josh and I had endured, and that's exactly what that story is going to come out in the long run, what we've both been through. The instigator knew. You know? Don't tell me that you can tell the daughter of a serial killer that the man she loves is going to be murdered and she's not going to be able to think straight. I couldn't think straight. I absolutely couldn't with a threat like that going on for months. With Josh's background, he absolutely could not think straight. The idea that I was going to be raped and tortured to death. And this was what they were putting out there. This was what they were making sure that both of us heard. And they could hurt us so badly without even touching us. And you know, Sandy told me that I can take a break for a couple days, you know, recuperate psychologically if I need to. You know, she and Neil appreciate the videos. She said they watch them pretty much every day. But if I need to, I can take a break. And I just thought, what good would that do? I appreciate the sentiment, Mama. I so do, but it won't help. I have to worry about getting attacked every single day. I have to worry about these people coming at me physically every single day. And Josh isn't here, so he can't protect me. It was like the thing he was most afraid of, it happened. All I can think about is finishing the mission. And part of that mission now is making sure that Josh's killers and the people that put him on the road to his death are held accountable. And I won't stop, ever. I will never back down. Because people might think that this is a bid for attention. No, this is what I'm doing to see they go to prison for what they did. Because they are still threatening me. They are. And I'm doing my best to make sure that if any of those threats actually come true, everybody's going to know who it was, who did it. I want to make sure that I go down fighting, and I want to make sure that those bastards choke on the name Joshua Lee McCollister by the time I'm done, and that they choke on my name as well. And that whatever trail there is for all this stupidity, the people who can eventually do something with it, law enforcement, maybe they'll have to pay someday for what they did to him, which resulted in him dying. They won't back down. Neither will I.